Hey everybody, Tom the Dilettante here. As the dilettante part of my name might suggest to you, I like to dabble in all sorts of things. Lately that's been the Subaru, and I hope you've enjoyed that content. Today I'm going to mix it up a little bit. Don't worry, I'll still do more Subi content, but today I want to focus on something I built for my wife as a gift for Christmas. A couple of weeks ago, my wife expressed interest in learning how to play chess. Just something to do for game night. Now, I suck at chess, but I know the rules of the game, I know how the pieces move, and so we started playing. We got ourselves a cheap little board from Amazon with cheap little pieces, and it's done the job for now. But I figured, you know what, if this becomes a regular thing, I'll get some nice pieces, so I ordered up some nice pieces from Amazon, and I thought I'd build her a chessboard. So today, I'm going to walk through this. I'm going to show you how I used my very amateur woodworking skills to build this chessboard. Something I'm pretty proud of, for a first go around, it's certainly not bad. It's got a couple of cork feet, and once you put the pieces on it, it looks pretty darn nice. So hopefully this will add a little bit more enjoyment to our game nights. If you're here just for the car content, don't worry, more of that'll come. If you're interested in learning how I put this thing together, stick around, I'll walk you through it. First, a disclaimer. I'm an amateur woodworker. Nothing you see here should be viewed as the way to do things. Instead, consider it more of a it worked for me style narrated tutorial. Follow or modify at your own discretion. So I started this project off by hitting up the local lumberyard and picking up some rough cut walnut and ash, two of my favorite hardwoods. I'm not doing an end grain board here, so it was important to me to find some nice pieces with good color and grain character. I like to buy unfinished lumber because in my experience it gives me more options to pick from, saves me some money, and just contributes overall to the whole craftsman experience. For the dark squares, I found a real nice piece of walnut with a deep chocolate color and good looking grain. And for the light squares, I found a nice piece of ash with uniform color and just enough grain variety to keep it interesting. Here, I'm cutting the boards down to an easier to manage size for shaping. The playing field is going to consist of 8 rows of 2-inch squares, so 16 by 16 overall. I'm cutting my boards to 22-inch lengths for shaping. That should give me enough end material for any sniping that might come from the surface planer and for cutting the size post glue up. Next, I need to get a nice straight edge on the boards as a reference for my table saw fence. For this, I'll use my old joiner. I got this thing from my uncle, and it just needed some new blades and a good tuning to get back into service. You gotta love hand-me-down equipment. The price is right, and it's a great learning experience, restoring just about anything. I've used this thing to build everything from kitchen cabinets to edge-glued tabletops, and it's by far one of my favorite tools in the shop. Once I've got a good straight edge on the boards, it's time to get them nice and flat and to an even thickness. This will make it easier to glue the pieces together later on, and hopefully make for less sanding as we get closer to finishing. For this, I'm using my DeWalt surface planer, another one of my favorite tools. I got this about 5 years ago when I decided to give building cabinets a shot during a kitchen rehab in our home. If you're using one of these things, make sure to leave enough material at the ends to allow for sniping. Sniping is simply when the board is cut slightly deeper at the beginning or end when going through the planer due to the lifting of the rollers. Next, it's off to the table saw to cut our 2-inch thick strips. I got this refurbished Craftsman table saw about 13 years ago for less than $200. I've since built this cabinet around it and installed a nice Vega fence to make the most out of it. Yeah, I'd like to someday get myself one of those nice big heavy-duty table saws, but this little guy's been the workhorse of my shop for over a decade, and it just goes to show you don't need the most expensive gear to make cool stuff. With the strips cut, we're going to do the first of our 2 glue-ups to make our checkerboard pattern. For the first glue-up, simply alternate your boards. In my case, alternate between walnut and ash. Take a moment now to scrutinize your boards and pick out the grain and color pattern that you think looks best. This is going to be your top after all. When gluing up, I tend to be a little generous with the amount of glue I use in order to ensure I have no voids. Normally, I'd be using a small roller to spread the glue, but I realized too late I didn't have any, so the trusty old finger will have to do. When edge gluing boards, don't go nuts and over-tighten your clamps. This might cause your work to bow, and it's really hard to recover from something like that. I usually go just tight enough to get a good squeeze out of the glue and then wipe off the excess. Unfortunately, I forgot to prepare a means to cross-clamp or apply downward pressure on the work here, so I just grabbed whatever was handy to get the job done. In this case, some angle iron, a scrap piece of MDF, and a dumbbell was going to have to do. Not my proudest moment, but you know what they say, if it's dumb but works, it ain't dumb. After letting the glue dry overnight, now it's time to cut another straight edge to index off the table saw. I don't have a track saw, so instead I'm going to square up a straight edge and use my circular saw to get the line I need. After cutting, I'll do a quick check again for square, and we're ready for the table saw again. After cutting another series of 2-inch strips perpendicular to the previous ones on the table saw, we're ready to create our checkered pattern simply by rotating every other board. This part was a lot of fun for me because it's here where you can start to see the project come together. We're going to repeat the glue up process one more time, clamp it up, and let it set for another 12 hours to dry. Once it's dry, we'll give it an initial sanding with the orbital sander using 120 grit to knock down any high spots from glue up and clean up the seams between the squares. It's here where if you invest your time in dimensioning your lumber properly from the start and pay attention to your glue up, you shouldn't need to spend a lot of time on sanding. With some leftover ash, I cut and glued on an 1.5 inch border around the field, which I think really helped complete the look of this board. Not wanting to risk any tear out from any of my main saws, I used a Japanese flat saw to cut off the excess trim. To finish it up before coating it, we'll apply a little bit of ash and walnut wood filler to mask any remaining gaps, give the border a little hand sanded bevel, and give it one last sand with the orbital sander, this time at 220 grit. Right about this point, it's not unusual for me to start getting impatient because we're so close to the finish line. But I've messed up enough pieces in the past to know that you really need to take your time when finishing a piece. So we'll vacuum up our mess, wipe everything down with a tack cloth, and get it ready for our first coat of polyurethane. I've come to like this Minwax water-based polyacrylic finish here in clear gloss. I didn't want to go crazy with poly or use something like bar top because quite frankly I didn't want the board to end up looking like plastic. I used this stuff on our kitchen table, which I built out of walnut, and it's proven to be a great looking and very durable finish. I'm going to put a total of 3 coats of this stuff on. When you're doing this, you'll let it set for 2 hours and lightly sand with 220 grit between each coat. After all is said and done, here is the finished board, along with our new chess pieces. I'm really happy with how this turned out. It might not be as fancy as some of those end grain boards with those ornate edges and inlays, but for my first attempt and being for casual use, I'm definitely proud of it. I think it looks great and I'm confident the wife will love it. Alright, well I hope you all enjoyed that video. Like I said, a bit of a change of pace for me on this channel. Being a dilettante, I like to dabble in all sorts of things, and woodworking is one of them. So if you like this kind of stuff, let me know in the comments below and I'll try to make more content like it in the future. Lord knows I've got plenty of stuff on my honey-do list to build around the house, and there's still some things around the shop that I'd like to get done. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing, and until the next time, have a good one.